Right now, there's probably someone in your phone you have not texted back in 3 days. They are kind. They are consistent. They like you, clearly, openly, without games. And you keep leaving them on read. Meanwhile, there is someone else. Someone who runs hot and cold, who you replied to in 11 seconds flat. You know this is backwards. You have known it for years. But the real answer for why you do it anyway is far stranger than bad taste or low self-esteem. It starts before you could even speak. In the 1950s, a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby was treating children who had been separated from their families during the war. He noticed something odd. The kids did not just miss their parents. Their entire nervous system seemed to organize itself around the presence or absence of one specific person. He called this an attachment bond, and he argued it was not a soft, sentimental thing. It was biological, a survival circuit. Babies who could not walk or feed themselves needed a system that kept them glued to a caregiver, no matter what. Here's the part nobody tells you. That system does not just track whether a caregiver is good. It tracks whether a caregiver is predictable. A researcher named Mary Ainsworth tested this directly in the 1970s with an experiment called the strange situation. She would bring a mother and baby into a room, have the mother leave, then return, and watch exactly how the baby reacted. Some babies cried, then calmed down fast once the mother came back. Securely attached, she called them. But other babies developed something else entirely. If a caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, sometimes there and sometimes not, the baby did not become less attached. They became more attached, more clingy, more anxious, more obsessed with tracking where that person was at all times. Read that again. Inconsistency did not weaken the bond. It strengthened it. Why would a brain be built that way? Wouldn't it make more sense to bond hardest with the most reliable caregiver? It would if love were about logic. It is not. It is about prediction error. Your brain is, underneath everything else, a prediction machine. It is constantly trying to guess what happens next, and it pays the most attention to anything it cannot predict. Psychologists have known this since B.F. Skinner ran his famous experiments with pigeons in boxes. Skinner gave some pigeons a food pellet every single time they pressed a lever. Simple, reliable, boring in a sense. He gave other pigeons a pellet only sometimes, on a random schedule, same lever, same box. But the pigeons on the random schedule pressed that lever harder, faster, and longer than the ones with a guaranteed reward. He called it intermittent reinforcement, and it turned out to be one of the most powerful behavioral patterns ever documented. Unpredictable reward does not weaken desire. It hijacks it. Now hold that next to a human being who texts you good morning every day at the same time, without fail. Comforting? Yes, but your prediction machine logs it, files it, and moves on. There's nothing left to chase. Now hold it next to someone who is warm on Tuesday and distant on Wednesday, who pulls you close and then disappears, who makes you feel like you are winning something every time they respond. Your brain cannot file that away. It cannot predict it. So it keeps firing, keeps checking your phone, keeps replaying the conversation, looking for the pattern that explains it. That is not romance. That is a slot machine. A biological anthropologist named Helen Fisher actually put this into a brain scanner. She and her colleagues studied people who had recently been rejected by someone they were still in love with, the kind of rejection where the other person was unpredictable right up until the end. When she scanned their brains while they looked at a photo of that person, the area that lit up most intensely was not a region associated with pleasure. It was a region tied to dopamine, motivation, and craving, the same circuitry implicated in addiction. Fisher and her team described romantic rejection as activating systems strikingly similar to substance withdrawal. Heartbreak, in other words, can look a lot like a chemical dependency, especially when the person you are craving was inconsistent. So here's the twist. The people who feel the most like home are not always the people who are the safest. Sometimes they are simply the people whose unpredictability matches a pattern your nervous system memorized decades ago, back when you had no choice but to adapt to whoever was raising you. If you grew up with a caregiver who was warm sometimes and withdrawn other times, your body learned a specific lesson early. Love feels like vigilance. Love feels like uncertainty you have to manage. Love feels like earning it back. And the cruelest part is that when you meet someone calm and consistent as an adult, that nervous system, the one trained for chaos, can read calm as boring, read consistency as a lack of chemistry. It is not. It is just unfamiliar. Psychologists Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver took Bowlby and Ainsworth's childhood framework and applied it directly to adult romantic relationships in the 1980s. What they found was unsettling in its simplicity. The attachment style you developed as an infant, the one shaped entirely by how predictable your earliest caregivers were, showed up again decades later in who adults were drawn to, how they handled conflict, and how they responded to a partner pulling away. People with anxious attachment patterns were more likely to feel pulled toward partners who were emotionally inconsistent. Not despite the inconsistency, sometimes because of it. Think about what that means. The spark you call chemistry might just be your oldest operating system recognizing a familiar rhythm. Hot, cold, cold. Present, absent, present, absent. Your brain is not asking, is this good for me? It is asking, do I know this pattern? And if the answer is yes, it floods you with urgency that feels exactly like attraction. This is why the calm, kind, consistent person can feel like nothing is happening, while the unpredictable one feels like everything is happening. Nothing is wrong with your judgment. Your dopamine system was simply optimized, before you ever had a say in the matter, to chase whatever feels uncertain. There's a strange comfort in knowing this, though. If the pull toward chaos is a learned prediction pattern rather than a character flaw, it can be unlearned. Therapists who work with attachment now talk about earned security, the idea that adults can slowly retrain the early wiring through relationships or therapy, or simply enough repeated exposure to consistency that the nervous system stops mistaking it for emptiness. It takes time. The old circuit does not go quietly, but it is not permanent. So tonight, when you catch yourself replying instantly to the person who runs hot and cold, and ignoring the one who never makes you wonder where you stand, pause for 1 second before you decide that feeling means something about who is right for you. It might not be a feeling at all. It might be a 50-year-old experiment with pigeons running quietly underneath your ribs, mistaking uncertainty for love.